Hello, this will be the video lecture for our kidneys. And if you want to follow along either with this presentation or with the 3D net that you can print out, just head to the description and follow the link, and then you can print it out from there. So, for the actual lecture, I want you guys to begin with placing your two fists on either side of your stomach. And this is around where your kidneys are. And even though they're only the size of your fists, they can filter about 140 liters of blood a day, and they produce urine, which makes a part of the urinary system. So the kidneys are made up of four main sections: the cortex, the renal medulla, which contains nephrons, and the renal pelvis and calyxes, which is basically where they store urine before excretion through the ureter. So the most important part of the kidneys are the medulla and the cortex, because that is where the nephrons are. Nephrons are just like the cells of our own body. Just like our cells are the basic unit of our body that performs a specific function, the nephrons are the main unit of the kidney that helps the kidneys function, and they can contain around 1 million nephrons. So there are almost three sections of filtration. So that's what the nephrons do. They help filter our blood. And the first part is the filtration. So we just want to take out the waste products from our regular blood, right? So that's what happens in the glomerulus. It's basically just a small ball of small blood vessels called capillaries surrounded by something called the Bowman's capsule. And this place, the glomerulus, has very high pressure that results in the smallest parts of the blood to be filtered out. Just think of it like a sieve, right? So when you have when you try to sieve some liquid, the smaller proteins or the smaller molecules will be end up filtered out alongside the water. And what is left is like the red blood cells and larger proteins, and that just exits out the vein. And the other part, which is now called the filtrate, enters the rest of the nephron. And the second part of the nephron's job is to reabsorb what they actually need. Because think of it like this: if they're filtering out so much water per day, right? 140 liters of blood, if we really think about it, we can't be excreting that much water. So what needs to happen now is to reabsorb most of that water back as long as it's necessary. And this is what happens in the first part, in the proximal convoluted tubule, which is where the reabsorption of water and nutrients take place. And the second part is the loop Penley, which is a lot more interesting because it has two portions. In the descending portion, the water leaves through osmosis, and then later in the ascending portion, we can see why this osmosis happens, because there is very salty surroundings due to active transport of Na and Cl out of the filtrate, and that's why a lot of water filters out of the filtrate here. And the final two parts is the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, where water also leaves. But it can leave. It's selective because it doesn't always leave in this section. And what happens here allows for homeostasis. And that's how our body wants to stay in its ideal state, right? It wants to have just the right amount of water. And the hormone that allows for this is ADH, which is the antidiuretic hormone. But the reason why we need ADH is because we want to prevent dehydration. If, for example, our body is dehydrated, we want to reabsorb as much as the water from the urine as possible. So that leads to increased ADH in our bloodstream, which is called antidiuretic hormone. So it's just anti-P hormone. It tells our body to make this section of the collecting duct very highly permeable, so water wants to leave. So more ADH, which is what the kidneys produce, or at least promote the production of, means that there's more water in our system. And if there's less ADH, that means more water stays in the urine. Now, we can see that covers the first section, the three main functions of the kidney. The nephrons are sort of what removes the waste products. There's two other important sections, is that it maintains a healthy balance of salts and minerals like calcium, um, because it basically allows for the absorption of calcium from our diet. And the second thing that it does, it regulates our blood pressure, because what happens is our kidneys realize, I'm not getting that much filtrate, um, which it sort of assumes is that's because there's not that much high pressure inside of the glomerulus. So it basically tells our body to produce more um, renin, which increases our blood pressure. And now this is the connection to pathology or physiology. So one of the main diseases of the kidney is chronic kidney disease, or CKD. And this is when there's a variety of factors, but there's basically just long-term strain on the kidneys. And this can be due to like high blood pressure and diabetes, which is the most common ones, or also age, because after a lot of strain, your kidneys can no longer function, can no longer filter your blood properly, and this is because there's scarring of the glomerular tissue. So basically, there's just lowered function. There are less filtrate that is being able to enter the nephrons, and it's no longer able to filter the blood properly. And this is what the really interesting portion is because if you look at the function and the symptoms, there's actually a really easy link in between them. So I'm going to try to frame the symptoms of CKD in light of the function of them. So if we look at the first one, the fact that our kidneys help remove the waste products, we can actually direct that link to the buildup of toxins in our blood over time, because they're just not able to filter it out, which causes general discomfort like nausea and diarrhea. But for the more specific CKD symptoms, we can look at how the kidneys typically regulate the blood pressure using renin. And because of the scarring of the glomerulus, the kidneys really receive lower amounts of filtrate, which eventually makes them think the same way as if they just had low blood pressure. I should try to increase the blood pressure. And that eventually leads to chronic high blood pressure within the patients with CKD. And finally, because these kidneys help promote the absorption of calcium from our diet, we still need to get calcium from somewhere. And the most um, I guess, prevalent place of calcium in our body is from our bones. And eventually, because the kidneys are no longer able to take in the calcium, they have to take the calcium from our bones, which can lead to brittle bones in our patients. So now let's look at the quick overview to sort of reframe what we just saw in a better light. The renal artery takes in unfiltered blood into the kidneys, into the cortex and the medulla. And then in the nephrons contained in these two sections, it's able to be filtered out. Then it travels to the calyxes and into the renal pelvis. This is where it sort of splits into two main products. One of them is urine, which exits out the ureter, and the second one is the filtered blood that exits out of the renal vein. Okay, that is pretty much it. Thank you for using this model, and I hope that you enjoy.